He was a billionaire who could buy anything except peace. And she was a janitor who had lost everything, including her name. When their worlds collided one quiet night in that empty hallway, something changed. She smiled like she had known him for years. But what he didn't know was that this woman carried a secret that could shatter everything he believed in. The office was silent, except for the hum of city lights beyond the glass. He stayed behind again, not because of work, but because loneliness had become his only companion. The smell of old paper, faint coffee, and polished floors filled the air. That's when he noticed her, a janitor moving quietly across the room, her hands gentle, her eyes calm. She didn't see him at first, or maybe she did and chose not to. The way she moved wasn't like someone trying to finish a job. It was like someone trying to escape a memory. He watched in silence, feeling something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He spoke softly, unsure why. "You're here every night," he said. She looked up, startled but not afraid. "Yes," she replied, "it's quieter when everyone's gone." Her voice carried warmth, a voice that made the cold room feel alive again. He smiled, trying to sound casual. "You must love your work." She paused, then said quietly, "No one loves cleaning what others leave behind." For a moment, their eyes met, and in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a wound that both carried. After that night, he began staying late for reasons he couldn't explain. Sometimes he'd find her humming an old song while wiping the same spot twice, as if she wasn't really cleaning, just thinking. He'd make excuses to talk to her, offer coffee, ask about her day. She never shared much, but her eyes told stories he couldn't read. There was grace in her sadness, beauty in her stillness, and every time she smiled, just a little, he felt the world slow down, as if for a brief moment he was no longer the billionaire trapped in glass walls, but simply a man, alive again. She arrived earlier than usual that night, the faint scent of rain following her inside. He was already there, pretending to type, but really just waiting for the sound of her footsteps. When she passed by his desk, he offered her a cup of coffee. Her hands hesitated before taking it, as if the warmth felt unfamiliar. "Thank you," she said softly, eyes down. "It's been a long time since someone made me coffee." He smiled, curious but gentle. Maybe it's time someone did again. She looked up then, and in that moment, her eyes held a story deeper than words, something fragile, something he wanted to understand. Over the next few nights, their silence became a language of its own. He would ask small questions, she would answer with half smiles. Sometimes he'd tell her about the stars he could barely see from his penthouse, or the taste of loneliness that money never cured. She would listen, never judging, only nodding with quiet empathy. Once, she mentioned she used to love painting, before life got too messy to stay colorful. He didn't know what that meant, but her voice trembled when she said it. He found himself wanting to protect her, though he didn't even know from what. One evening, as the city lights flickered below, he found her standing by the window, lost in thought. "If you could start over," he asked, "what would you do differently?" She smiled, faint but honest. "I wouldn't chase happiness," she said. "I'd build it, piece by piece." Her words lingered in the air like a prayer. He looked at her and saw something rare, not just beauty, but strength forged from pain. And before he realized it, the man who had everything found himself drawn to the one woman who wanted nothing at all. He began to notice the little things, the way she always glanced at the same corner of the hallway before leaving, or how her smile never quite reached her eyes. One night, as she packed her cleaning supplies, he asked, "Why do you always look there?" She froze, then laughed softly. "Old habits." But her voice cracked at the edges. The next day, he found her staring at the portrait of his father hanging in the main lobby, her gaze distant and trembling.
"He looks familiar," she whispered. He thought nothing of it then, but a strange unease settled in his chest. The more he tried to know her, the more mysterious she became. Her words were simple, yet carried the weight of someone who had lived 1,000 lifetimes. She never talked about her past, and when he gently asked, she changed the subject, usually with a kind smile that said, "Some doors are meant to stay closed." Still, every night she showed up, and every night he felt the air between them fill with something unspoken. He began to wonder, who was she really, this woman who moved through his world like a ghost from another life? Then one evening, she didn't come. The halls felt emptier than ever. He waited, 5 minutes, 10, an hour, but the sound of her soft humming never returned. Her absence hurt more than he wanted to admit. As he walked past the lobby, something caught his eye, a small pendant lying near the cleaning cart. He picked it up, curious. When he opened it, his heart stopped. Inside was a faded photo of his father, and beside him, a young girl with eyes he now knew all too well. The janitor. He sat alone in his office, the pendant trembling in his hand, the weight of truth pressing against his chest. The photo inside didn't lie, his father's smile beside a little girl with eyes just like hers. Memories flooded back, whispers of boardroom scandals and ruined lives. His father had built an empire from ashes that weren't his own. And now, that past stood before him every night, sweeping floors under his name. Shame burned inside him. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the ghosts of his father's sins had finally found him. He left the office and drove through the rain, searching for her without knowing what he'd say. The city blurred through the windshield, each drop echoing his guilt. When he finally saw her outside the small diner, soaked and shivering, she looked smaller than he remembered, fragile but unbroken. "You shouldn't be here," she said, eyes glistening under the neon light. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. "You knew," he whispered. She nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "I just wanted to see if forgiveness could exist in the same place that destroyed me." He wanted to tell her he wasn't his father, that he never knew, that he would make it right. But she stopped him with a glance. "You can't fix the past," she said softly, "but you can choose what kind of man you'll be tomorrow." Her words cut deeper than accusation. They were mercy disguised as pain. He stood there, rain dripping from his face, realizing that forgiveness wasn't something she owed him. It was something he'd have to earn. And as she walked away into the night, he understood. Some debts are paid not in money, but in grace. He found her again days later, cleaning the same hallway where they first met, as if nothing had changed. The sight of her brought both relief and guilt crashing over him. He approached quietly, his footsteps echoing in the marble silence. When she turned, he held up the pendant, her eyes filled with tears before a word was spoken. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice shaking. She looked away, her tone calm but breaking. "Because I didn't want you to see me as a victim. I just wanted to remember what peace felt like, even if only for a few nights." Her words hit him harder than any truth ever could. He stepped closer, the hum of the building filling the space between them. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said softly. She shook her head, a sad smile forming. "I carried it long before you came, and I'll keep carrying it long after you leave." For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the rain tapping against the windows filled the air. Then, quietly, she added, "You're not your father. I know that now." That single sentence broke something inside him, not in pain, but in release. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Let me make it right." She finally looked at him, eyes glistening like glass catching light. "You already did," she said gently. "The night you listened, the night you saw me, not what I lost." He wanted to hold her, but didn't. Instead, he just nodded, tears slipping down unnoticed. In that moment, surrounded by silence and memories,
two broken souls finally found the courage to stop running, not from each other, but from the pain that had defined them both.
Weeks later, the office didn't feel the same. The air carried a softness it never had before, a kind of peace that comes only after a storm. He had rebuilt what his father broke, not with money, but with heart. The community center her family once dreamed of now stood again, painted in light and laughter. She worked there too, not as a janitor, but as a teacher, helping others who had lost everything find their way back. He often visited quietly, standing at the doorway, watching her smile, that same smile that once healed him when he didn't even know he was broken. One evening, as the sun melted into gold, she walked up beside him. They stood in silence, watching children play in the courtyard. "You did it," she said softly. He shook his head. "We did." Their hands brushed, a fleeting touch, but enough. There were no grand confessions, no promises of forever, only a deep understanding that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go with grace. She looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." He smiled, eyes warm. "No," he said, "thank you for teaching me how to." Sometimes forgiveness isn't found in words. It's found in the quiet moments when two people choose kindness over pride. So, if you've been hurt, if someone has failed you, don't let bitterness be your legacy. Let compassion be. Because maybe, just maybe, the person you forgive will never forget the day you chose to heal instead of hate. And that, my friend, is how broken hearts make the world whole again.